All right, and my clock says 10:15, so we will go ahead and get started in order to make the most of our time together. So hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful SUNYLA conference so far. Welcome to session D3, A Tale of Two Seed Libraries, Sharing Seeds in the Academic Library. My name is Claire Payne. I'm a librarian at Stony Brook University, and I'll be moderating the session today. So a few quick notes before I hand things over to our presenters. First, please be aware that we are being recorded today, as you all should have received the little pop-up notification. And then second, as an attendee, please do stay muted unless you are invited to speak. I'll be monitoring the chat and will help facilitate some question and answer time at the end, so please do feel free to put any questions or comments there. All right, all that said, without any further delay, let me hand things over to our speakers, Paulina Borrego, Jenica Ibarra, Alyssa Koclanes, and Nancy Schuler.
So thank you, Claire. My name is Paulina Borrego. I'm a science and engineering librarian, the patent and trademark resource librarian, and co-founder and wrangler of the Mass Aggie Seed Library. I come to librarianship as my third career and have worked at the UMass Amherst Libraries for around a dozen years. Recently, I changed my liaison responsibilities, and starting a seed library seemed like a good project aligned with my departments, the libraries, and the land grant mission of the university. And as an aside and a connection to you all, I grew up in upstate New York, north of Albany, and one summer took classes at SUNY Albany.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Nancy Schuler. I'm e-resources, collection development, and instruction librarian at Eckerd College. We're here with it as a team of 3 from Eckerd, so I'm going to pass it along to my colleagues to introduce themselves too.
I'm Alyssa Koclanes. I'm an associate professor in the technical services, serials, and instruction librarian at Eckerd College, where I've been for about 12 years. And I enjoy opportunities here to work with students and help develop new projects, such as the Seed Library.
Morning, I'm Jenica Ibarra, visiting instruction and outreach librarian, also at Eckerd College. I'm the newest member to the team. I've been there a little over a year. I've been in the field for close to a decade now. All right, so we wanted to start things off today with a couple of short polls. Claire, could we go ahead and get those polls now? All right, so our first question is, do you currently have a seed library? Yes, no, or you're thinking of starting one? And also, how much gardening experience do you have? Okay, so it looks like got a handful that do have a seed library, so that's great. Maybe we can share some ideas later on in the Q&A. It looks like most of you do not, and just one of you is thinking of starting one, but maybe a couple of you in that no category will get some ideas and change your mind on that today. Our gardening experience looks like we're kind of in the middle here, a little and a lot. Point being though, you don't really need any gardening experience to start a seed library. You probably will pick some up along the way though. All right, we can go ahead and move on. And I'm still seeing the poll on my screen, is that?
You probably just need to close the window on your screen.
Oh, sorry. All right, so we believe that librarians, I'm sorry guys, we believe that librarians are very good stewards for a seed library, and libraries are the perfect place because we already come to the table with a lot of just both innate characteristics and learned skills that are applicable to the seed library. Many of the skills that we use managing our more traditional resources, organization, process oriented, are also applicable to a seed library. So Eckerd College and Mass Aggie are two quite different colleges. We actually got connected through this conference. We both submitted proposals to share about our seed library. So the conference organizers asked if we wanted to work together. And of course, being librarians, we definitely wanted to collaborate. And we've gotten to learn a lot from each other and really come to understand how different our colleges are. But also, a seed library can work at any type of college. As you can see, Eckerd is a newer college. Mass Aggie's been around for a very long time. Mass Aggie is much, much, much larger than Eckerd. And as a research university, we're a small liberal arts college at Eckerd. We also had some differences throughout the pandemic. Mass Aggie has been remote throughout the pandemic. And at Eckerd, we were able to successfully reopen in the fall of 2020 with surveillance testing and, lots of protocols in place. Our team sizes are a bit different. Mass Aggie, Paulina pretty much runs the seed library on her own. And at Eckerd, we have the three of us, and we also have a lot of our both federal work study students and some other students who have gotten involved through classes. So we have more of a team-run seed library. We also came to discover one thing that has made a lot of difference in our processes is the level of bureaucracy. Paulina at Mass Aggie, with it being so large, it's inevitable you're going to have a lot more bureaucracy. And with Eckerd being small, we honestly kind of get to do more or less what we want. So that was a big thing we found in the differences as we were working together. And of course, we're in two very different locations, so two very different growing areas, seasons, and all of that good stuff. All right, so we're going to kind of go back and forth for the presentation. We're going to go through the origin, how our seed libraries came about, how we set up the seed libraries, how we have maintained the seed libraries, and also what we've done as far as events, outreach, getting faculty involved, getting students involved. We'll then share our tips that we've learned, our lessons we've learned, and then we will have time for your questions at the end. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Paulina to share the origin story for the Mass Aggie Seed Library.
Thank you, Jenica. So the origin story, how did it all begin? The story of the Mass Aggie Seed Library begins with this young woman, Gabriella Bosco, a UMass undergraduate biology student. Gabriella approached Madeline and myself in the fall of 2018, asking to set up a seed library. I had recently changed my liaison departments and saw this as a good project for outreach and engagement with my new faculty and the greater community. Gabriella and I met weekly in the fall of 2018, and by April 2019 had the Mass Aggie Seed Library entirely up and running. We made many decisions along the way, some which we had to undo. Helping us think things through were Madeline Charney, the sustainability librarian, and Daniel Bensonoff of the UMass Permaculture Gardens. We wrote a grant for a modest campus sustainability, innovation, and engagement fund to help with the initial purchase of materials. Gabriella created a logo there on the upper right, and the library communications program coordinator, Leslie Schuler, created a postcard using Gabriella's logo, which has become our signature branding. Next slide. Okay, so this is how it happened. Gabriella and I walked through the 4 floors of the Science and Engineering Library looking for an unused space and found this narrow annex with these electrical closets on the left, far from ideal due to the large windows. For a seed library, I don't think you want light and heat, and that's all we had. Nonetheless, we embraced the space, got it painted a spring greenery color, and searched the basement for materials we could repurpose. We found an old card catalog and an atlas case that we were able to refurbish. And most importantly, we embraced a mindset of experimentation and low tech, knowing we could change things that did not work. Next slide.
Okay, so we're gonna jump and talk about Eckerd's origin story. So our Eckerd Seed Library launched just a little bit more than 2 months ago on April 5th. We received an internal grant at the end of 2020 and began working on the seed library in January. So after only 6 weeks of being open, we've distributed more than 86% of our seed packets, which is hugely successful for us. Obviously, college students like to have free things as well as staff and faculty. But we also believe that the project has been successful because of our campus culture. We're on the water, we're surrounded by nature, so sustainability and environmental stewardship is a big part of who we are. Next slide. So the initial idea for our seed library came to fruition last fall through a number of coinciding factors that made this year the right time for us. During a class prep session with one of my theater faculty, we were discussing ideas for her class on performance and the environment, in which she would have her students develop environmental installations focused on native wildflowers as host plants for butterflies. And so the topic of seeds and seed saving came up, and the seed library was basically born from there. Second, our campus has also had a thriving student-run garden, which will soon be expanded into a farm. So the timing was right. I also began my own COVID garden this past year, as many people have. So I was thinking a lot about gardening, about native plants, and about saving and sharing seeds. So the hope is that the library will provide the infrastructure and expertise necessary to maintain and promote the collection, while our campus faculty, farm advisors can help us identify ways to keep the collection stocked and create opportunities for volunteering and collecting seeds over time. We also hope to establish partnerships around campus by creating programming related to Florida gardening and seed saving. Next.
So planting the seed, next slide. So how is the seed library set up, the Mass Aggie Seed Library? The Mass Aggie Seed Library is completely self-serve and not mediated in any way. Patrons take seeds from the commercial seed packets located in the repurposed card catalog and transfer the desired amount to a hand-stamped seed checkout envelope. The checkout envelopes are stamped green, while the donation envelopes are stamped brown. Patrons log their seed activity in a simple binder there on the top of the map atlas case. We also have a guest book and a low-tech bulletin board to answer patron questions. Dot stickers are placed on the commercial seed packages every year so we can track the inventory. This makes it easy to cull older seeds and keep the inventory updated. We do not keep a spreadsheet of any inventory, only a simple spreadsheet of donated materials for acknowledgement purposes, because I write everyone a handwritten thank you note. This low-tech and non-mediated approach allows us to remain under the radar for many large institution and library bureaucratic systems. Next slide. So I created the Mass Aggie business cards for Gabriella. I thought that was important for her to be part of this and have her own business cards. And I made those out of old card catalog cards. A colleague of mine made me a picture book about the seed library, which I take everywhere for outreach. Books and materials for loan are cataloged to the seed library designation, a separate location within the building and the card catalog. These materials are part of our 5-college consortium catalog and the Massachusetts Commonwealth catalog. So any patron in Massachusetts has access to the books I have in the seed library. There's always a pile of give and take patron donated gardening magazines, and a gardening themed puzzle is always out to attract students to the space. I purchased a refurbished department store display case here adorned with a garland of seed packets and clothespins, and we're going to have our first exhibit in the fall. One might say this setup does not look like an academic library, and to that I would say exactly. This is the perfect space to attract and welcome community patrons that do not come to our library or large campus otherwise. Next slide. We have begun collecting materials for loan, also cataloged to the seed library space. Thus far, items include a pot maker using newspaper strips, a soil sifter, seed cleaning screen kits, and a variety of soil blockers. A variety of UMass agriculture extension materials are always available, along with local happenings related to gardening. Next slide.
Okay, so switching back to Eckerd, as we started the library, we kept things very simple. So as we mentioned before, we applied for an internal grant to start the project. So initially we invested in a starter set of seeds for distribution and various seed sorting supplies. So you can see our seed sorting station here. It's super simple. There's some seed sorting trays, some scoops and tweezers. There's the various envelopes and labels that we're using to label the envelopes of seeds. Then we also had a scale, which we only found somewhat useful, so not an essential part of the seed sorting station. But we focused on acquiring seeds from regional seed companies. So in Florida, those were places like Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, Florida Seed and Garden, and the Florida Wildflower Cooperative. We also began making connections with faculty who have worked with our campus garden or taught courses related to gardening, food security, and sustainability, just to gauge their interest in the project. So a lot of those faculty have become our advisors for the project. So the focus now is really on building that initial collection of seeds to kind of draw attention to it. And then hopefully over time, we'll be getting people to grow their own plants and save seeds to donate back to the library. We only have one campus library, so there were only so many options available for the location of the seed library. We chose this little nook under our main stairwell as the best location. It gets a decent amount of foot traffic and it's close to our front entrance. And the whiteboard gives us a little space for signage and just even asking questions to patrons. There's also a little table for related books and other information we have for the seed library. So we tried to repurpose as many things as we could. We did have an old card catalog that would have been great to use, but it was so massive that we were afraid that our seed packets would kind of get lost in it. So we decided to go with this more modest, but not as pretty metal cabinet for now until our collection grows. Next slide. Okay, so we knew we would have to, of course, have some initial seed packets for the collection. So we invested about $100 for seeds. And of course, we're a really small campus. This amount worked for us. It was enough seeds per packet to maybe start a couple of plants per person if they took a packet of seeds. And then another $100 was spent on the seed sorting materials and seed envelopes, which we definitely invested a lot in. We acquired some end of season seed packets at a discount, so definitely be on the lookout for discounts at your local garden supply company. We also received some initial wildflower seed donations from faculty. So all the seeds are sorted into packets. They're labeled with basic details based on the origin of the seeds. And all the seed sorting and labeling was completed by library student workers and librarians. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about kind of how we keep all of that organized in a couple of slides. Next. Okay, so the other part of our project this spring was to plan for some of the initial marketing to promote the seed library, and there was definitely some early buzz around campus. Our student library workers were obviously involved in talking about it with their friends, so the word got out early, so we didn't really need to really do too much promotion, fortunately. We had an early partnership with a winter term class on the science of gardening, that just happened to be happening at the same time we were working on this. So it's 2 students from that class helped us develop our initial seed library website, which you can kind of see a screenshot here. A couple students and librarians worked on different plant profile pages for various seeds available in the library. And we also had 2 events in April to help promote the launch of the library, which Jenica will share about in a few more minutes. Okay, so now we're going to move to garden maintenance.
So garden maintenance, how do we keep it tidy? I don't. So the Mass Aggie Seed Library is self-serve and completely non-mediated. I make it a point to walk through each day and tidy the area somewhat and make sure the seed supply is stocked. I keep a variety of items in reserve so the supply is fresh and ever-changing. Most items, such as envelopes, writing utensils, and branded swag, and extension materials are stored in the extra drawers in the card catalog. People love opening them and finding things, while other materials such as the back stock of seeds and puzzles are stored in a small lockable cabinet. Next slide.
So we also decided to have a self-service and non-mediated seed library due to our library's small size. And so we're not currently tracking individual checkouts or who takes seeds. We do have a sign requesting that no more than 3 seed packets are taken each week, which seemed to work well in the spring, but we may make some adjustments in the future due to a few things that did come up. One example is that a student did inquire about taking more than 3 seed packets at one time because they wanted to start a small garden all at once. So that is something that we might take into consideration as we review our checkout policies for next year. Also thinking ahead, we may want to look into a binder for users to log their activity similar to what Paulina is using going forward. Next slide. So while the checkout process is self-service, we do use a detailed tracking spreadsheet to conduct an inventory of the collection. The spreadsheet is also linked on the Seed Library's website so users can see what is available from there as well. Initially, we started with a weekly inventory conducted by a library student assistant, as you can see here on the spreadsheet. In the spring, but we may move to a twice monthly inventory going forward. And right now during the summer months, we don't have students on campus, so we can just conduct kind of a monthly inventory. And I think we're working towards repopulating it as well for the fall. The inventory can help us, see the amount of seeds we have left in the collection, and will also be used since we're so new. We'll find it helpful to use it for planning purposes as we add more seeds prior to the next semesters. And also helpful to see, which seeds maybe are taken more quickly and which ones maybe aren't as popular. So it can help in determining which seeds to add and maybe which ones to discontinue. Next slide. So one way to help maintain the collection is to accept seed donations, which has been mentioned. So we've received some from faculty already, and even some students have started inquiring about donating seeds. For example, a student inquired about donating seeds from the star fruit they had gotten from the grocery store. But after some quick research, it was determined that those seeds don't last more than a few days and wouldn't be good candidates for the seed library. But we are planning to advertise a seed donation form to share with the campus community in the fall to help sustain our seed library going forward. There are also some organizations that you can reach out to about seed donations, including, as you see here on the slide, the Seed Saver Exchange, who sent us some seed packets in April to add to our collection. It's also important to be mindful of the growing season in your area and the temperatures. So Florida is unique and a bit different from other parts of the country in terms of our growing season due to our high temperatures. Certain plant varieties need to be planted much earlier in Florida in order to be successful. As we expand the program, our collection of seeds will be based on what can be grown throughout the year here in Florida. We will also work on developing programming, saving seeds, growing seasons, and also basic gardening skills. Next slide.
So growing the seed library, what we've done for outreach and what are our dreams for the future. So things were going along pretty well. We had a kickoff open house and I was attending agriculture extension events, and then the pandemic hit. Next slide. So in the spring of 2020, just as we were gearing up for a seed starting workshop, the pandemic hit and I moved the entire seed inventory to my garage. With a bounty of seeds, I decided to take on the challenge of mailing seeds to patrons using some of my professional development funds for postage. So this was about $400 that I spent of my professional development money. I set up a simple Google form where patrons could request up to 5 seed types on the most basic level. So like tomato or pepper, things like that, most basic level. I got the word out to those who had attended our open house, along with faculty in my liaison departments. In the course of a month, I mailed over 1,000 repackaged seed packets to some 200 patrons. This is not something I would recommend. But I did the same thing this year, mailing around 800 repackaged seed packets to around 150 patrons. Since each seed envelope mailed to patrons had to be hand stamped at the post office due to the seeds, keeping the staff at my local post office was important. I supplied a chocolate bar with each seed bundle dropped off at my post office. So this is not something I would recommend anybody do, just so you know. Next slide. This is something I would recommend that you do. In March 2021, while meeting up with Daniel Bensonoff of the Permaculture Gardens to look through the seed inventory packed in my car, I got the idea for the Mass Aggie Traveling Pop-Up Seed Library. Over the course of spring 2021, I held 5 pop-up events on campus and 3 at local public libraries. These events were incredibly popular. 46 traveling pop-up seed patrons took some 552 seed packets, with only one person of 46 not coming for their appointment. That I find amazing. Again, I used a simple form for people to make appointments and made sure to remind them of COVID protocols during this pandemic. One surprise was the popularity, you'll see it there on the lower left, of a basket of mishmash donated mystery seeds. People loved looking through that, and I think during this pandemic, they were desperate for contact and a bit of good cheer. It must be stated that the bureaucracy navigated to have these pop-up seed library events was Herculean. It was amazing what I had to jump through. Since people are staying close to home still, I began also supplying seeds to little free libraries in my neighborhood. So you'll see there's one on the little right there, little seed library. Next slide. The UMass Permaculture Garden students have supplied us with lots of seed donations, along with patrons beginning to get involved. As these seed donations come back, lots of questions about tracking and packaging arise. Gabriella and I are trying not to get overwhelmed by these donations and the questions they bring. This seems to be our next challenge. We are also thinking of multiple ways for patrons to get involved, from helping to clean seed, package donations, and share their expertise by leading workshops, or donating money for materials. Next slide. So along the way, a variety of outreach materials are used to educate patrons about the space, the materials, and seed saving. I maintain a live guide for the seed library and tried to document everything I do. So one of the new things that we started to do is, you'll see there on the upper right, the flower. Every year we are taking our seed library logo, that postcard, and creating it into some either flower or vegetable shape to stamp and designate that year. Next slide.
All right, so for Eckerd College, again, we just launched the seed library this past April. So despite the pandemic, we did want to have a couple of events to celebrate and promote the launch of the library. Again, we did have students on campus, thanks to our small size and some other pandemic measures we had in place. So we initially planned for 2 events, Seeds at Sunset and the Triton Melon Challenge, which I'll share a bit about. Our initial plan for Seeds at Sunset was to utilize our beautiful South Beach area you see in the picture on the bottom left there. This is a very popular waterfront spot where students like to gather, particularly around sunset. So we thought that, with it being outside and being such a large space, that we were hopeful we could have an event. We were planning to have different tables set up with the supplies students would need to plant a seed and then to also paint and decorate their pot. Unfortunately, we had a small spike in our cases on our surveillance testing the week before this was planned. So we did decide to instead turn it into a grab and go activity. And you can see on the right here, myself and some of our student assistants put these kits together and just put them out in front of the library on a Friday afternoon. And you can see here, putting the kits together, and it actually, I was really bummed we couldn't have the event. We were really looking forward to it, but at least I felt like our student assistants had such a fun afternoon that day putting this together, because, everyone was just very hungry for activities right now, I think. So here's a closer picture of the kits. We, of course, included soil, the seed packet. We did have to kind of at the last minute get these little cups and paintbrushes. Well, we had the paintbrushes. We had to get the cups for the paint. Initially, we just, planned to put the paint on a paper plate. We included some candy, and Paulina actually shared these really cool coloring pages that she has made from different gardening related patents. So those were pretty popular too. We included instructions on how to plant the wildflower seeds. And if you can see on the left here, one of our faculty members wanted to also use this event to promote the butterfly sightings website through the North American Butterfly Association. So we put information on how to take pictures and upload and track the different butterflies that you're seeing in your area as well. So we made, I think, about a little over 80 of these kits, and we put them out on a Friday afternoon, and they were gone in, I think, about 45 minutes, and we had students asking for more. So this was very popular. Our other event is the Triton Melon Growing Challenge, which is actually going on now over the summer. This is a completely contactless event, so very pandemic friendly. The Triton melon is a hybrid seed that one of our biology professors and her classes developed, I believe a few semesters ago, a couple years ago. And so that was really fun, like a special melon that's just for our college. So we had interested people, faculty, staff, and students who wanted to participate in growing the melon over the summer. They signed up, and then we mailed them the seeds, or they picked them up on campus. And currently, the participants, I believe we had about 35 or 36 participants. So we're growing the seeds over the summer, and then we'll check in the fall and compare results, see what methods work the best, and how everybody's melons turned out. We've been using our existing social media channels, which will be our Facebook and our Instagram primarily, to promote the seed library. We also made a specific Facebook group for the seed library. We're kind of still thinking on that one because we do really have that traditional 18 to 22-year-old student body, and they really are not on Facebook. So we're trying to we're trying to think of, there might be a better way to connect with the students. But you can see here, this is Nancy's Triton melons on the right at a couple various stages of growth. And we are fortunate to have both a library staff member and a student assistant who are very good at making beautiful graphics like this. So we have also been putting those out on our Instagram. So we really wanted to get students involved in the Seed Library project. And as Nancy mentioned earlier, we did have a Science of Gardening course going on, and we had 2 students opt to do their reflective service learning and make us a website, which came out absolutely beautiful. We're super pleased with the work they did on the website. We also have a number of federal work study students that work in the library who also helped out some with the website, and again, some of the graphics for social media, for posters and flyers. And also really our best advertising has been our student assistants getting very excited about the Seed Library and telling their friends and classmates about it. So I did want to briefly show you our website. There's of course links so you can take a closer look on your own. So we can announce our events on here. This was just made with Google Sites. We also do keep, as I think Alyssa mentioned, the spreadsheet here. So people can take a look before they come in and see the most recent inventory check. So I will, okay, let me get back to the presentation here. All right, so we wanted to take a few minutes before we get to the Q&A to share our words of wisdom, lessons learned with you all.
Okay, so the Mass Aggie Seed Library, what have we learned? At this point, given 3 years of Mass Aggie patron data, we have more questions than you can imagine. So here we go. How do you create a respectful community in an economy where the items are free? I am in search of a behavioral economist to help me figure this out. Should we be providing seeds for items no one will ever return? Why do we give people carrot seed if no one will ever return carrot seed? So for people who don't know, carrots are biennials. So here in the Northeast, you would plant the carrot seed, you would let it grow. When the fall and winter came, you would have to dig up that carrot. You would have to store it in cold storage at a particular temperature. Then in the spring, you would replant that carrot and you would let it go to seed and return that seed. Is anyone going to do that? Plus there's a lot of cross-pollination. No, so why do we give anybody carrot seed? Okay, how can we or should we streamline donations? So people, we have donation envelopes, but a lot of times people don't use those. So should we repackage stuff or do we let people return things in however they want to return it? Should we track these seed donations? How do we fold in other community partners? And how do we create a seed library that is sustainable and lives on beyond our future? So we are just in the process of reaching out to people to start an advisory panel. Next slide.
All right, at Eckerd, some of the things we're thinking about for the future of our seed library, we do want to work on streamlining our communication. In all honesty, the seed library was much more popular than we anticipated. So we were just, getting questions from all different angles and, people not quite sure who to ask. So we have made an email address that goes to the three of us. That's just Seed Library at Eckerd. Again, we have the Facebook group. And we're thinking about possibly setting up a listserv so that our community of gardeners can communicate with each other as well easily. We definitely want to keep students involved. We will be working with relevant classes to see if any of those students want to volunteer. And we also have a number of our student assistants will be returning next year who were involved with the Seed Library. And as Nancy mentioned at the beginning, we want to work on engaging both the garden and our just soon to be starting farm managers, and also continue to work with our faculty advisors who really helped us out in the early stages because none of the three of us were gardening experts by any means. And we do have seed exchange groups in our larger community that we hope to get involved with in the future. And also, as we're coming hopefully out of the pandemic, we would like to have some more workshops and events, hopefully in person in the fall and then moving forward into the spring.
So in final thoughts, just as all gardens are different depending on the conditions and interests, all seed library grows and adapts depending on the community interests and the support. In our presentation, we have shared with you the story of two very different seed libraries. We hope you come away with an appreciation for what a seed library has to offer to your patrons and the community, and that one size does not fit all seed libraries. Most importantly, be flexible and adopt a mindset of experimentation and change. Next slide.
And these are some resources if you are interested in starting your own seed library. We have both of our websites, and also there are just some groups that we found along the way, just as far as connecting with other seed libraries around the country. and also some of those seed companies that you might be able to get donations from or get discounted seeds. Right, and that is the end of our presentation. So we are happy to take any of your questions at this point.
Thank you all so much. I'm glad that SUNYLA could bring you together, because I feel like that was a great collaborative effort, and wonderful to see the perspectives from both institutions. We do have some questions that have already been rolling in through the chat. I know Paulina answered this one in chat, but I will read it out loud just in case folks missed it. Yvonne asks, risque question, but I'm curious, as Massachusetts is one of the states that has legalized cannabis, have you considered the possibility of seed donations of that nature? And Paulina has something in the LibGuide, but if you wanted to add anything about that.
I will add that last week at the Brattleboro, or a few weeks ago at the Brattleboro, Vermont farmers market, I did buy some marijuana plants, not to partake in, but as a gardener, just to see how it all works, right? Because I don't know what's going to happen, but people do ask me questions about that as a plant. And boy, that thing grows. Yeah. So that'll be exciting to see what happens with that.
Thank you. Another quick question for the Massachusetts Seed Library. Is it open all year, or do you tend to open it in early spring through the fall?
It is open all year. And as a matter of fact, it's opening to the public on Monday. So I had to go in this week and restock everything and get everything all ready.
Great. And then we have a question for everyone from Erin. Do you have any tips for building inventory without a budget?
I would say go to if you're comfortable doing this, go to local businesses and tell them that you're going to start a seed library, and ask if they can give you packets, right? Because some seeds are good for a very long time, years and years. So ask if you can have those packets, and in exchange, you will acknowledge them some way in your seed library. But there, as Nancy was mentioning, there are also places that will, a lot of places will give you seed for free. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, Nancy.
Sure, yeah, and the one that we've received so far, we've applied to about 2 or 3 seed companies for kind of their excess packets. The one that responded the quickest is Seed Savers Exchange. So we have that linked, I think, from probably both of our websites, but also the slides. But I think I submitted it in April, and we received the seeds in May. We did have to pay shipping, but that might be kind of a common thing that you see with seed companies. But definitely kind of making those connections with those local gardening stores. I don't know if Lowe's or Home Depot would really do it, but you probably don't want those seeds anyway. But you know, even some of our students are doing summer internships with some of the native plant nurseries in our area. We've got some wildlife parks that also have, you know, of course, extensive plants that we might be able to partner with to do some harvesting. I think that will, of course, require time and volunteers to get those seeds in. But those are the strategies we're working for now. But hopefully over time, I think it's just something that'll take time for kind of the word to spread, and for people that are actually interested in saving things and having things already on hand. You know, if giving them the place to put something and donate it and share it with the community will be kind of the big part of, you know, getting that community together.
Thank you. Lots of comments in the chat that are just fabulous presentations, so make sure you all put an eye towards those. We have another question about, I guess, resources. Andrea asks if there are sources you'd recommend for purchasing the seed sorting supplies.
So like the seed cleaning screen. So I think Southern Exposure, I bought some seed cleaning screen kits, right? And those were incredibly expensive. And then I went to a Richmond Grows webinar, and someone made the comment of using gold panning sieves. Those are the ticket. You get like 10 gold panning sieves with screens of different sizes for like $80 or something, 10 of them. So that is my ticket. I'm changing over to those things. And then for other things like soil blockers, I bought those, I think, from Fedco. And so there are a lot of supplies out there.
And we obtained a lot of ours, of course, from Amazon, just because they have everything you can imagine. They have envelopes that are, they're not super cheap, but they're affordable. And you'll definitely need a lot of envelopes, so definitely have a budget for those little packets. But other than that, what I started doing is subscribing, or at least getting seed catalogs. And a lot of times the seed catalogs will have like all of these, the newest, coolest equipment that might be relevant for the seed library. We don't have anything available to check out yet in ours like Paulina does, but I think having those on hand so that people would want to try it and kind of have the resources and tools to kind of save their seeds and sort their seeds would be really, really helpful.
I want to add something to that, although maybe I shouldn't say this because it's being recorded, but I'm going to say it anyways. So I have to go through a lot of bureaucracy to get those things cataloged, right? I mean, like, you cannot imagine. Just imagine your worst nightmare of trying to get something cataloged. So lots of times I'll be up in the seed library doing my little walkthrough, tidy through, and someone will say like, do you have da, 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 da? And I have a whole backlog of items that have to be cataloged. It's going to take like a year. They're like, oh, they can't do that. You're at the bottom of the list. Okay, whatever. So what I do is I just say to people, here, just take it. Just give me something that you have. Like, give me your BJ's card or something. So like, so yeah, I'm kind of off the rails doing that. Don't tell anybody.
I also wanted to add, we did make the decision to sort the seeds ourselves, to put them in, to just grab and go packages. But there are some seed libraries that they have just a larger quantity of seeds out, and then the patrons actually use it, scoop or something, and it's truly self-serve. They just scoop the seeds into their packet. We decided that we wanted to go with the pre-sorted ones. It just seemed easier to kind of to track and keep tabs on. And we also had the resources because we had enough student assistants who were happy to help out with the seed sorting. But that is another option that could be cheaper and less labor intensive.
Great. We have another question. Who are the typical patrons of your seed libraries? Or maybe if there's no typical patron, what different kinds of patrons you see?
So for me at the Mass Aggie Seed Library, it is community members. And that is why I say, if you're in a big academic library, or, you should just do it, because what happens is those people never come to our library, and now they are coming because of the seed library. And so then you can hook them up with all the other resources and stuff. So for me, it's community patrons.
For Eckerd, I would say it's mostly students. I mean, since we've been open, we've been closed to the public for the last year, so we haven't been able to attract community patrons, but there has been interest. One thing I'll say first is that we don't catalog who checks things out. We just kind of make it an open collection that people can come and grab things as they go. We assume it's mostly students and maybe some faculty and staff sprinkled in there. But there is interest, and we've had alumni, we've through our social media posts, we've had alumni inquire about if it's available to them, if we can send them packets. We do not have the staff to be able to send packets, or the inventory to send packets to people at this point, so we're not going to do that. But there's definitely interest from the broader community, and that's what we're going to be thinking about down the road as we get a better collection, a richer, more abundant collection, is how do we get the seed library out to the community? There's one public library in our area that has an existing seed library, but I'm sure there's a lot of partnerships outside of them as well, of getting our seeds out there, whether it's through a seed swap or just kind of setting up shop at the local nature park. There's a lot of ways that we hope to expand the collection, so it's just not of benefit to our campus. We definitely don't want to limit it to us.
I love hearing about using the seed library as a tool to connect to the community. I think that's wonderful. Andrea asks, Sorry if I missed this, and I don't think I heard this either, but do you loan gardening tools, and are they popular? Or if you don't currently, do you have any plans to move into the kind of tool library space?
So we at the Mass Aggie Seed Library, we made a decision not to get into like grow lights or heat mats. So we do the soil blockers, we do the seed screen cleaning kits, but we don't do that here in my area of Massachusetts. Our transfer stations, my dump has a huge tool lending library with rototillers and weed whackers and like, so most of the transfer stations have tool lending libraries.
And we do not lend any tools. I mean, I love the idea of having kind of just a library of things that people can check out. But at this point, we don't have the staff or the resources to invest or support it. But we also have our garden centers. So I think a lot of students are involved with that. So it's, there's tools available on campus. So hopefully it meets their needs in that way.
Question for the Eckerd folks. How do you maintain, I think this is about the garden that you mentioned. How do you maintain the garden when students have a longer break, for example, over the summer?
I believe the garden has summer student volunteers. I'm not sure if they receive credit to kind of keep the garden going, but at the same time, the summer growing season in Florida is, there's only so many things you can grow. So there's probably not a lot of maintenance that needs to happen, like as far as kind of, harvesting things and things like that. So that's not something that any of us are directly involved in, but there are definitely a handful of students that kind of help keep it going over the summer. And I think with a new farm manager, that'll be even better as kind of time goes on and the garden expands. We have been talking about setting up some, we have all these future ideas for cool things we could do related to the seed library. And one of those things is having some sort of installation site where we can kind of showcase some of the seeds from the seed library, maybe have a butterfly garden right outside their library, so that people can kind of see, what the potential is and why they would want to have a butterfly garden to begin with. But we've gotten a lot of questions like that, like how do college students grow plants on campus? Can they just pick a plot of land and put seeds down? Is the maintenance crew gonna mow over it? What are some of those things that they need to think about? And that's something we need to kind of explore is, what are those safe areas for students to grow in other than the garden, if any? Like if there's pots on their patio, are they safe? How do they encourage other students to be respectful of the plants that they grow? So I think it's a lot of potential for conversations to have on campus for how to nurture that as part of our community.
Thank you. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, but we do still have a few minutes. So please feel free to throw those in there if there's anything else you're wondering. I was going to ask you all if you had resources or I guess how much of your own gardening self-education you had to do before you got involved in these initiatives, and what resources you would recommend for kind of knowing enough about your local growing seasons and climate and resources before you would start a seed library like this.
So I'll just say I was a gardener before this, but this has really upped my game, and I was not a gardener who ever saved seeds. I never did that. So now all of a sudden everything is like, oh my God, that produces a seed. Can I save that seed? How do I save that seed? Did that cross-pollinate with something else? So like your whole world just expands and becomes like the lens of seeds, which is, I think, just so wonderful to embrace and be open to a whole level of not knowing. So I use that with the people who come into the seed library. They think I'm an expert. I'm like, I don't know. There's got to be a YouTube video about that. Let's like watch it together type of thing. So I am in no way an expert. I'm a hack, but I love learning and doing it alongside people. And I think that approachability kind of allows other people a welcoming space.
And I would agree that, of course, I started my garden this year after many years of trying and failing, but this is the year that obviously we had time to explore and spend time on things. Somebody mentioned YouTube in the chat. Definitely a lot of great seed saving YouTube videos that I definitely turn to for ideas. But a lot of it is just, getting out there, planting some things and seeing that life cycle of the plant so that okay, this is the seed, or this is the seed for this plant, and this is the seed for this plant. And just learning as you go is okay. So I think it's definitely up to my gardening skills, and just, I think one of the first seeds I saved was the sunflower that I got from our local Saturday market. So that was kind of an easy way to see, oh, I can save these myself. Whether they grow later or not, it usually involves a little bit more planning, because some seeds have to be stored cold storage for a couple months. Some seeds have to just kind of sit and dry for a while. So it's just definitely a learning process, but you don't have to know everything. And that's why we built our faculty advisors as well, so they could kind of be a resource for us as we kind of go through these next couple of years.
I think that's the librarian way, right? You don't have to know everything, but we'll figure it out as we go along. Yeah. If we don't have the answer. Morgan asks, have you dealt with any issues of trademarked donated seeds or concerns about the quality and viability of donated seeds?
So I was going to mention that. So a big concern of mine, my other whole world in my librarianship career, is patents and trademarks. So the story of patented open pollinated seeds is of concern to everybody. And so I don't think people really understand what that means, that there are plants that are open pollinated, which is what we collect, but some of those plants have become patented. So you cannot save the seed from those. So I would look at Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. They have wonderful seed saving courses that you can take online. And that is a place to be educated about open pollinated and trademarked seeds. I just recently put something on the website about that we don't knowingly accept patented or trademarked seeds. So I would say people should educate themselves about that.
Anything, have you all had that issue at all in where you are in Eckerd?
Not yet at Eckerd. I mean, we are kind of just making it an open collection to begin with, because we're not getting a huge amount of donations at this point. But we're kind of going through and establishing, or at least have an idea of what we want our collection policy to be. So, I have a collection development librarian. So obviously we want a collection policy for the seed library as well. So through the guidance of our advisors, they suggested just kind of keeping it open at first and just kind of seeing what kind of seeds we get. And it's through talking with Paulina and just kind of learning that there's other issues like patented seeds that we have to worry about as well. But also, hybrid seeds. Do we want to collect hybrid seeds? Because they're not going to give us the expected plant, in later generations. So do we even want to accept those? Probably not. The Triton Melon growing challenge that Jenica was talking about, that is a hybrid seed. And we decided to include it because it's, part of our campus, but it also gives us a chance to talk about, okay, this is a hybrid seed. So what does that mean? Can you save it for the library? Do we want to save it as an experiment and just see what happens when we grow that second generation of seeds from there? So for us, it's more of like a learning opportunity of, these are all the different things that you have to consider when you're growing, gardening, saving seeds. So it's really just kind of another thing for us to talk about with the campus.
Great. Well, I think I don't see any more questions in the chat, so we will wrap up there. But thank you all so much for these great ideas, and thanks to all our attendees for the great questions in the chat. I look forward to reviewing these slides again as well for my own gardening practice. So I hope to see everyone in later sessions today.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.